The kitchen, 6:47 in the evening. You can hear it before you see it. A low, mechanical, the refrigerator, the distant sound of a neighbor mowing grass. And underneath all of that, that specific hollow glow coming from the living room couch, your child is there, completely still. The tablet balanced on their knees, face tilted upward at the screen. Their jaw is slightly open. Their eyes, unblinking. Pupils fixed on a cascade of 30-second videos that never stop moving, never stop talking, never stop rewarding. You walk in, you do the reasonable thing. You say, "Okay, that's enough. Time for dinner." And then it happens. The silence breaks, not gradually, all at once. Their body stiffens. Their face collapses. The sound that comes out of their mouth is not a word. It is something older, something raw, a sound that belongs on a nature documentary, not in your living room. You feel it in your chest, that particular parental cocktail of confusion, exhaustion, and shame. You think, this child has everything. Why is this so hard? What you are witnessing is not a behavior problem. It is a neurological event. Most parents assume that the meltdown is about defiance, or manipulation, or poor discipline. The child, they think, simply wants what they want and is throwing a tantrum to get it back. That assumption is logical. It is also completely wrong. What you just witnessed in that living room has almost nothing to do with personality or stubbornness or even the quality of your parenting. It is the predictable, measurable output of a specific chemical cascade happening inside your child's brain. A cascade that was deliberately engineered by a team of software architects whose professional objective is to make it impossible to stop. The tantrum is not a choice. It is a withdrawal, and by the time this video is over, you will understand exactly why, at the level of neurons, neurotransmitters, and cortical architecture. Because the only way to change what happens in that living room is to understand what is happening inside that skull. Has this scene happened in your home? Drop a comment below. Let us know your child's age and how long it took to calm down. You are not alone in this. Let us anchor this in the science. In 2019, researchers at the National Institutes of Health published the first large-scale neuroimaging study on screen time in the developing brain. The study, part of the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Project, known as the ABCD study, scanned the brains of over 11,000 children between the ages of 9 and 10. What they found was precise and alarming. Children who used screens for more than 2 hours per day showed significantly lower cortical thickness in regions of the prefrontal cortex, specifically the areas governing impulse control, attention regulation, and emotional processing, not as a future risk, as a measurable, present-tense structural difference, visible in the MRI data. In 2020, a peer-reviewed study published in JAMA Pediatrics, one of the most cited pediatric medical journals in the world, followed 2,500 children from infancy through kindergarten. The lead researcher, Dr. Sherry Madigan at the University of Calgary, found a dose-dependent relationship. The more screen time a child received at 18 months, the more pronounced their behavioral and attention difficulties were at age 5. The relationship was not coincidental. It was linear. Dr. Dimitri Christakis, director of the Center for Child Health, Behavior and Development at Seattle Children's Research Institute, has spent 2 decades studying what he calls the overstimulation hypothesis. His argument, backed by decades of experimental data on rodent models and pediatric cohorts alike, is straightforward. Early exposure to rapid-fire screen stimulation conditions the developing brain to require escalating levels of input to register pleasure. The baseline shifts upward, and once that threshold rises, ordinary life, conversation, outdoor play, a page in a book, becomes neurologically invisible. If this data is useful to you as a parent, press the like button right now. It tells us to keep making content at this level of depth. Now, let us go inside. Every app, every game, every short-form video platform your child uses is built around a single neurochemical target: dopamine. Dopamine is not, as popular culture describes it, the pleasure molecule. It is more precise than that. Dopamine is the molecule of anticipation, of prediction, of the gap between expecting a reward and receiving it. Every swipe of the finger, every new video that loads, every notification badge that appears, these are engineered dopamine pulses. Small, frequent, unpredictable, variable ratio reinforcement. The identical mechanism that makes slot machines the most profitable gambling device ever invented. B.F. Skinner documented this in the 1950s. The most addictive reward schedule is not one that pays out every time. It is one that pays out sometimes, unpredictably. The brain finds this pattern irresistible. It cannot look away. And a child's brain, with its dramatically higher neuroplasticity, its lower baseline inhibitory tone, its still forming regulatory architecture, is exponentially more vulnerable to this mechanism than an adult brain. While your child is on the tablet, their mesolimbic dopamine system is firing in sustained, high-amplitude bursts. The nucleus accumbens, the brain's primary reward processing center, is flooded. Dopamine levels are elevated far above their natural resting baseline. Now, you walk in. You say, "That's enough." You remove the device. What happens next is not metaphorical. In the seconds following the removal of the screen, the child's dopamine levels do not simply return to baseline. They drop below it. This is called Dopaminergic Rebound, a well-documented pharmacological phenomenon in which the sudden removal of a sustained stimulus causes a transient underproduction of the neurotransmitter. The brain briefly produces less dopamine than it would in a neutral, unstimulated state. The subjective experience of this state, even in adults, has been described in clinical literature as dysphoria, flatness, a sudden, gray, motivational void. In a 9-year-old with an undeveloped prefrontal cortex and no conceptual framework for what is happening to their own neurochemistry, it is experienced as pain. Simultaneously, the removal of the reward source triggers the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, because the amygdala does not distinguish between physical danger and chemical deprivation at sufficient intensity. Both register as threat. Both activate the same response. The sympathetic nervous system, adrenaline, cortisol, heart rate elevation, respiratory changes, the entire biological machinery of survival. That is why your child is screaming. Their nervous system is not being dramatic. It is responding to a perceived biological emergency, the abrupt cutoff of a chemical reward that their brain has learned over weeks and months to depend on. And here is the component that makes this structurally impossible for them to manage alone. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that could, theoretically, override the amygdala response, apply rational context, and say, "This is fine, this is just dinner," does not fully mature until approximately 25 years of age. You are asking a child to deploy a brake system that has not yet been installed against an engine accelerating at 200 kilometers per hour. If you want to keep decoding the hidden science behind your child's behavior, subscribe right now. Every week, we go one layer deeper. There is a specific pattern you need to watch for. The meltdown after screen removal, distressing as it is within the range of expected neurological response for children with heavy screen exposure. It is serious, but it is common. What is not common, and what represents a deeper signal, is a phenomenon researchers at Stanford's Department of Psychiatry have described as contextual anhedonia in children. The technical definition is an inability to derive pleasure from age-appropriate, non-digital stimuli. Here's what it looks like in practice. Your child finishes with the screen. The meltdown subsides. You offer alternatives: a board game, the backyard, a book they used to love, an activity that 6 months ago they would have chosen themselves, and they look at you with something that is not quite sadness and not quite anger. It is closer to blankness. The activity is not rejected. It is simply not registered. The nervous system does not respond. There is no spark of interest, no willingness to engage. The world outside the screen has become neurochemically invisible. This is not a personality trait. It is a recalibration of the reward threshold. The brain, having been conditioned to expect high-intensity dopaminergic input, has raised the floor of what it recognizes as pleasurable. Low-intensity stimuli, the kind that constitute most of real human life, no longer clear that bar. If you observe this pattern consistently across multiple days, across multiple types of alternative activities, and across multiple attempts at re-engagement, that is the signal. That is when the screen time conversation shifts from a parenting preference into a developmental urgency. Document what you see. Bring it to a pediatric neurologist or child psychologist. Use the specific language, contextual anhedonia, decreased response to non-digital stimuli, because naming it precisely is what gets it taken seriously. Back to the living room. Your child is on the couch. The tablet is glowing. Dinner is ready. What you now know that you did not know before is this: the next 2 minutes are not a test of your authority. They are a neurological transition period, and the way you navigate them determines whether your child's brain gets a bridge or a cliff. The research on what works is consistent. Developmental psychologists call it bridging. The mechanism is simple. Before you remove the device, you enter your child's world for 2 minutes. You sit beside them. You ask what they are watching. You engage briefly, genuinely, with whatever is on that screen. What this does, biologically, is gradual. It allows the prefrontal cortex to participate. It gives the dopaminergic system time to begin moderating its own output before the cutoff arrives. It converts what would be an abrupt cliff edge withdrawal into a gradual slope. And then, after those 2 minutes, you say, okay, one more, and then we eat. One more, not forever, not negotiated away. One more, with a clear, known endpoint. The meltdown does not disappear, but its intensity reduces, measurably, predictably, because you are working with the biology instead of against it. You are not being permissive, you are being strategic. Here's the question I want to leave with you. When was the last time your child experienced sustained pleasure? Real, absorbed, self-generated pleasure from something that had no screen attached to it. Not reluctant participation. Not performance for your benefit, but actual joy. Think about that and drop your answer in the comments below. It tells us more about what your child's nervous system needs than any diagnostic tool currently available, because that answer is where the real work begins. If this changed the way you think about your child's brain, like this video and subscribe. Next week, we decode another invisible force shaping your child's development, one that most pediatricians never mention in the exam room. You do not want to miss it.